A 60th birthday is a major milestone, and longtime rap music mogul James Prince decided to celebrate in a major way.
Everyone said there were two sides to Tupac, the wonderful side and the not so wonderful. Suge Knight's influence brought out the worst.
November 1st, 2022, a night that shook the whole hip-hop world. A rising star, Takeoff from the Migos, was found dead in a Houston parking lot. The spot, right outside a bowling alley, with people around him linked to one of the most feared families in rap. Within hours, social media blew up asking the same question. How could this happen if he was supposed to be under the protection of the Prince family?
You are definitely a legend in the music biz, especially the South. Now, what would you recommend to a young person that wants to start their own business and be an entrepreneur like you did in this music game?
Well, I can only recommend my flow plan, you know.
Okay, for sure.
Which is the flow plan that Master P, Cash Money, Swerve House.
But here's where things get crazy. This wasn't the first time someone lost their life after being seen with Jay Prince or his sons in Houston, and it definitely wasn't the first time rappers noticed their money missing after dealing with the so-called godfathers of Houston hip-hop.
All of them was my students.
Okay, already.
So get focused first, and the only way to get focused is be a believer in God.
Already.
You know what I mean? You got to get your mind focused, and from there, you got to exercise that faith.
For over 4 decades, Jay Prince built an empire that stretches from Rap-A-Lot Records to boxing management, from cattle ranches to the darkest corners of the music business. Yet behind the clean suits and positive speeches lurks something way darker. We're talking about a family that allegedly turned checking in into a massive money-making machine, an extortion ring worth millions. A family whose name keeps popping up around mysterious deaths, and one so powerful that even federal agents struggle to bring them down. Today, we're tearing the mask off rap's most feared dynasty.
You know what I mean? Which is work. A lot of people think they can pray up on something without work that's dead.
Faith without work is dead already.
Yeah, so that's what I recommend from there. Put your priorities in perspective. You know, you got God first, you got family, you got work, then you got church.
We're about to break down exactly how Jay Prince and his sons allegedly pulled millions out of artists' pockets and how their names keep showing up in connection with deaths that still haunt the rap scene. Even some of the biggest stars in hip-hop are too scared to speak against them. Stick around till the end, because what we uncover about their secret moves and the trail they've allegedly left behind will forever change how you look at Houston's rap scene. This is the untold story of hip-hop's most feared family. Let's dive right in. But before we get into the rumors, the deaths, and the talk about extortion, you gotta know who Jay Prince really is and how he built this empire that's got the entire rap world on edge.
That's Southern style. Them East Coast boys don't know nothing about this recipe I'm giving you. But this will work for us because this is the meat. You know, I call the West Coast a piece of bread, I call the East Coast a piece of bread, and the South, we the meat.
James Prince was born in 1965 right in Houston's 5th Ward, a place known back then as the Bloody Nickel. It wasn't just a nickname. This area was one of the roughest, poorest neighborhoods in all of Texas. By the 1970s, the 5th Ward was topping Houston's charts for shootings, stabbings, and murders. The average income there, barely $8,500 a year, while the national average sat around $67,000. Life there wasn't easy, and survival meant playing tough, and Jay Prince learned that early on. That's a shocking 155% below the poverty line. Jay Prince often says he started out doing things the right way, mowing lawns at just 7 years old, working as a bank teller, and later running his own used car business called Smith Auto Sales in 1986. It sounds like the perfect American dream.
My street depth, meaning that I'm a little more seasoned where the streets are concerned. And Puff, Biggie, is somewhat surface deep to a certain extent. You gotta call it like it is. I saw that a mile away, and it was important for me to explain to them the possibilities and the things that I was hearing, you know, but just automatically it would register to me, you know, after what had happened with Pop. And,
a young black man hustling hard, escaping poverty through sheer drive and discipline. But here's where things start getting cloudy. Jay Prince himself has admitted, both in interviews and in his book, The Art and Science of Respect, that he was deep in the streets during that same time. He talks about street activity, never spelling it out completely, but he doesn't exactly deny it either. It's like there's always more to the story than what's being told. And then came the moment that changed everything. Word is, he found out his own mother had become addicted to crack cocaine, and it's been rumored that the drugs might have come from his own operation. That hit hard.
Assumptions of them having something to do with it, or the hate that was in the air for them, period, even before that took place. This wasn't a place to be. And you have to really have experience where the streets are concerned.
From that point, he supposedly decided to go legit and build something real. By 1987, J. Prince launched Rap-A-Lot Records with the goal of keeping his younger brother, Sir Rap-A-Lot, off the streets. And that's when things really started moving. J. Prince built a studio right on top of his car lot and started laying down tracks. But this move wasn't just about keeping his family out of danger. He saw something no one else did, an untapped lane that the whole music industry had slept on.
To even begin to understand what can happen. And I think if they would have really been a little more depth where the streets were concerned, they wouldn't have been here like that.
Back in the late 80s, Southern hip-hop was invisible on the mainstream map. New York had Run DMC, LL Cool J, and that hard East Coast sound locked down, while the West Coast was heating up with NWA and the gangster rap wave. But the South, nobody was paying attention. J. Prince flipped that script. He formed a group called the Ghetto Boys, featuring his brother, a fierce performer named Bushwick Bill, Willie D, and later, a young rapper he randomly discovered in a parking lot, none other than Scarface. That moment changed Southern rap forever. And here's where J. Prince's cold-blooded business side started to show. When he realized Scarface had way more talent and star power than his own brother, he didn't hesitate. His brother was out and Scarface was in. Loyalty took a backseat when the money started rolling in. The group's albums Grip It, On That Other Level, and later We Can't Be Stopped blew up big time, turning the Ghetto Boys into legends and putting Houston on the map for good.
You know, man, what have this shit come down to in the world today? You know what I mean? It's I can't believe people play with people's intelligence the way they play with people's intelligence and intellect.
The Ghetto Boys were wild, raw, and straight up controversial. But that's exactly what the rap world needed to finally start paying attention to the South. J. Prince did it. He made Houston a major player in hip-hop. But with fame came a new kind of spotlight, one shining straight from law enforcement. And this is where things take a serious turn, because what happened next showed that J. Prince wasn't just another music executive chasing fame. In 1988, the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, launched a full-blown investigation into J. Prince and Rap-A-Lot Records, and this wasn't some local Houston police deal, this was the federal government. The same people who went after Pablo Escobar and the Medellin cartel were now targeting a Houston record label. That alone had the streets buzzing with questions. Agents believed that Rap-A-Lot Records wasn't just about beats and bars. They thought it was a front for a massive drug trafficking operation. They suspected J. Prince was using his label to clean dirty money years before BMF got famous for allegedly doing the same thing with their entertainment hustle.
You know, the way they do today, you know, people are telling lies for a living. You know what I mean? They actually lying to y'all for a living, but as you can see, you know what I mean, live in a living color. This is what my jail cell look like. You know what I mean?
And what really fueled the Fed's suspicions? In 1992, an El Camino linked to Smith Auto Sales, J. Prince's car lot, was pulled over near El Paso, Texas during a so-called routine stop. And what they found changed everything. When cops searched that El Camino, they uncovered something wild, a hidden compartment stuffed with 76 kilograms of cocaine.
But this Offset dude, I ain't gonna leave him out. You know, I'm just real like this, you know, because, you know, niggas be throwing rocks and hiding their hand, right? They be throwing rocks and hiding their hand. And I don't like them kind of individuals. You know, and the truth of the matter is, you know, one can dance and different things in front of
That's around 167 pounds of pure product worth millions on the street. The two guys in the car were cuffed on the spot, and from that moment, the DEA's spotlight on J. Prince burned hotter than ever. Between 1988 and 1999, he got arrested 5 separate times on drug-related charges. 5 times, but here's the twist. He was never convicted, not even once. One of those run-ins went down in 1988.
These different cameras and all that kind of shit. And when reality, the truth of the matter is, you know, nigga, you wasn't really right there with Takeoff when he was alive. You know what I mean? So for you to be taking these positions that you taking.
J. Prince says he was cruising in his Mercedes coupe when he got pulled over. According to his version, the officer approached with his gun already drawn, yanked him out of the car, and threw him in the back of a squad car. After sitting there for nearly an hour, the cop came back holding a small white pill, claiming they found it in his vehicle. Sounds suspicious, right? But J. Prince wasn't about to let that slide.
You know what I mean? And I got people everywhere, so I hear all kinds of things. I'm gonna just say this to you. Don't never put me in no position where, you know, I have to defend myself. You know what I mean? That wouldn't be healthy for you.
The very next morning after making bond, he headed straight to a hospital to take a drug test, just to prove he wasn't under the influence of anything. Then, following his lawyer's advice, he even took a polygraph test and passed. He released both results publicly to clear his name. And here's where it starts getting real sketchy, because what happened next made people question if someone powerful was trying to set him up or if he really was untouchable.
And, you know, I have to say that. But it's $1 million worth of game. You know what I mean? It's $1 million worth of game, and I'm going to give it to him right on $1 million worth of game, because I ain't going to throw rocks and hide my hand. I'm going to just let it be known, you know, to him, because I hear what's being said. And it's all love after that. Peace.
Well, it's just like that.
On the police side, things got real messy. The story about what drug they supposedly found kept changing again and again. First, they said it was ecstasy. Then it turned into mandrax, a type of quaalude. And later they switched it up once more, claiming it was Valium. Even the official police paperwork didn't match what the officers were saying publicly. In interviews, they swore the pill came from J. Prince's car.
I make big money. I drive big.
But in the actual report, it said the pill was found in the back seat of the police car. That's a serious red flag right there. Once that news got out, Houston exploded with outrage. Massive protests formed outside the Houston Police Department headquarters. Busloads of people showed up demanding justice for J. Prince.
If I lost everything that I possess, own, or have material-wise, this guy killed all of those people. You know, I brought the investigating report.
Supporters shouted that he was being targeted and that the whole thing was a setup, claiming those drugs were planted to frame him. The public pressure worked. The charges were dropped, but that moment sent a clear message. J. Prince had deep community roots, serious influence, and the money to stand toe-to-toe with law enforcement. Still, the DEA wasn't backing off. 2 agents in particular.
You know, like Mike said, it was so unnecessary. It wasn't even that type of atmosphere. You know, y'all talking about a basketball game. You know what I mean? A 2-on-2, playing a 2-on-2, and now you turn a misdemeanor into a felony.
Chad Scott and Jack Schumacher made it their personal mission to take J. Prince and Rap-A-Lot Records down. For over a decade, they stayed on him, watching, following, and building cases. They would literally park outside the Rap-A-Lot offices for hours, pulling over anyone leaving or entering the area. J. Prince later said these agents were straight up harassing him and his people, trying to twist evidence and create something out of nothing just to justify their endless investigation. And here's where the story flips in a way nobody saw coming.
Switching gears for a second, you were around with Drake, and did you, from the beginning, did you realize he was going to be the star that he became?
I didn't realize it, but my son, Jazz Prince over there did. You know what I mean? And I tried to discourage him.
And it just might prove Jay Prince had been telling the truth all along. Out of nowhere, the massive DEA investigation that had hounded him for years suddenly came to an end in 2000. According to official records, U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno personally shut the whole operation down just like that. But the real question is, why? That's where the rumors start flying.
And he, said to me, this is the new sound, Pops. Ride with me on this one, and I did.
Best thing you ever done? One of the best things.
Yeah.
Word on the streets was that Jay Prince had donated $200,000 to Al Gore's presidential campaign and that he may have used some powerful political connections to turn up the pressure at the highest levels of government. It didn't stop there either.
Any thoughts on we saw the Drake-Kendrick beef, any thoughts on that? Is that good for the game, bad for the game, is there anything?
I don't really have a comment.
Okay. Congresswoman Maxine Waters even stepped in, sending a letter directly to the Attorney General, accusing the DEA of racial profiling and harassment against Jay Prince. And right after that letter landed, boom, the investigation was shut down completely. But the story doesn't end there. It actually gets wilder. In 2019, nearly 20 years later, one of the lead agents on that same case, Chad Scott, was convicted on 7 federal charges, including falsifying government records, perjury, and running his own extortion schemes. His partner, Jack Schumacher, also got exposed for serious corruption.
And one other thing, we saw the Rick Ross going into Canada, bumping that, the diss record, Kendrick diss record. Any thoughts on that?
I don't really have a comment.
No comment on that, but would that be wise? Is it a wise thing to do?
We have to ask Ross that question.
Okay, all right.
But somehow dodged prosecution and even managed to get promoted to chief detective at the Harris County DA's office. Crazy, right? These were the exact same agents who spent over a decade chasing Jay Prince and digging into Rap-A-Lot records. The same guys who built those cases, and they turned out to be dirty cops the whole time. So now the question everyone's been asking hits even harder.
This clown that came here, I wish he would have never came with Quavo. I wish he would have never brought this nigga into Houston because he can't think. You know what I mean? This whole root of everything happening is from his action. And to be frank, honest about the situation, I wish that bullet would have hit him instead of Takeoff, because he was the one that...
Was Jay Prince really moving drugs behind the scenes? Or was he just a powerful black businessman who got targeted by a broken, corrupt system? And that's the real question right there. But no matter which side you believe, one thing is clear. Jay Prince had the kind of power, influence, and connections that let him stand face to face with the federal government and actually win. That's not normal.
I don't believe Jay Prince is a professional anything. He's a CEO of a rap label, so he's a professional entertainer. So he can entertain. He's been in the entertainment business. He ain't been in the street business.
That's not something your average record label owner could ever pull off. So if he could go head to head with the DEA and come out untouched, what chance did regular rappers have against him? Now let's break down the system that Jay Prince and his sons are allegedly known for, a setup that's made them millions over the years. It's called checking in. Depending on who you talk to, it's either a respectful tradition in hip-hop or straight up extortion with a smile.
I think that's where y'all get it twisted. Y'all think the niggas in the entertainment business are real gangsters. If you know they name in the entertainment world, there's no way they know gangster. Come on, nigga, ain't no gangster is involved with a microphone in entertainment.
Here's how it supposedly works. When rappers or celebs roll into Houston, especially if they're performing, doing business, or just showing face, they're expected to check in with Jay Prince or one of his sons. That means reaching out, letting them know you're in town, maybe linking up for a meeting or being seen with their crew. It sounds polite on the surface, like just paying respect to the city's OGs. But there's a whole other layer to it.
Why don't mob ties have any RICO charges like every other gang in mafia? Because they're not a real mob. They're really pretending. But the people, we think they're a real mob. We really think Jay Prince is a mob boss. So I posed a question to the people who believe Jay Prince is really a mob boss.
According to Jay Prince, this isn't about money or control. In interviews, he said it's all about relationships. keeping artists safe, showing love to the culture, and helping people move the right way through Houston. He even tried to flip the phrase, saying instead of checking in, young artists should call it getting connected. Sounds positive, right? But let's be real. When you start looking at all the situations where people didn't check in or they did and things still went bad, the picture starts changing fast. It doesn't look like friendly networking anymore. It starts to look more like a quiet form of pressure, maybe even a modern-day protection game with an industry twist. Think about how the old-school mob used to move. They'd walk into your business and say, hey, this is a rough neighborhood, bad things can happen, but if you pay us, we'll make sure you stay safe. That's straight-up extortion. Creating the threat, then charging people to be protected from it. Now, several sources and even former Rap-A-Lot insiders have claimed that's exactly how the Prince family has been operating in Houston for decades. The proof? It's written in both the bodies and the bank accounts. They say Jay Prince turned this whole checking in idea into a money machine. One that kept rappers scared, respectful, and paying up. Even Jay Prince himself has admitted he was the one who started this culture. In one interview, he said, the first time I heard the word checking in, it was in relation to Houston. I'm gonna have to take the blame for that. And the wild part? He said it with pride, like it was something to celebrate. But when law enforcement started circling and the public began questioning the whole setup, that confidence started to fade. In newer interviews, Jay Prince's tone changed big time. He said, is there supposed to be a certain protocol for people to check in? No. All these different people want to insinuate like we're extorting people, like they have to check in. Man, there ain't no money in that. I got more money than I could spend. Sounds convincing. But actions always speak louder than words. And if you really start digging, the stories surrounding who got treated differently in Houston tell another side of the truth. Some rappers who checked in got full VIP treatment, safety, love, and promotion. But others who didn't, things went sideways fast. One of the most talked about moments happened when Jay-Z came to Houston, right in the middle of some serious tension between him and Jay Prince. Jay Prince once admitted in interviews that he knew exactly when Jay-Z's plane was touching down in Houston. He said, I got calls that he was in the airport, then added, imagine that, I'd know when you land. That's a bold statement. According to reports, Jay-Z didn't follow the so-called check-in protocol the right way, and Jay Prince hinted that things didn't go well for him at his hotel because of it. He never said what exactly went down, but the message was loud and clear. In Houston, if you don't play by the Prince family's rules, there are consequences. But the story doesn't stop there. The NBA YoungBoy situation pulled the mask off the checking-in system like never before. In 2018, a group of people broke into NBA YoungBoy's Houston home. And this wasn't some random break-in. These guys moved like they knew the place. They went straight for valuables, found the car keys, and even filmed themselves during the job. They seemed to know the layout perfectly. According to NBA YoungBoy, the robbers barely got away with anything. Just his cameraman's Gucci flip-flops and some loose cash, but that's when things got shady. After the robbery, the burglars allegedly tried to extort him for $30,000 to get his stuff back. YoungBoy wasn't backing down though. He jumped on Instagram Live and called them out directly, basically saying, drop your location if you really want smoke. Then, just like that, the burglars vanished from the internet. And who popped up out of nowhere, acting like the hero? Jay Prince. He went public claiming he had recovered YoungBoy's stolen items and wanted to make things right. Sounds generous on the surface, right? But many fans and insiders saw it differently, wondering how Jay Prince even knew where the stolen goods were in the first place. The whole situation made people question whether he was really cleaning up the mess or just controlling the game from behind the scenes. In a video, Jay Prince said, the lil homie's place got broke into. I got your keys to your Rolls Royce, I got your keys to your McLaren, all that. They took all good waiting on you. On the surface, it sounded like a friendly gesture, but NBA YoungBoy wasn't feeling it at all. He clapped back publicly, telling Jay Prince to mind his business. That's when people online started connecting dots and asking some serious questions. Was this whole situation a setup from the jump? Did people connected to Jay Prince's circle rob YoungBoy, only for Jay Prince to swoop in later, return the stolen items, and make it look like he was doing him a favor? If true, that would be a power move straight out of an old school playbook. Create the problem, then fix it yourself to make someone owe you. It's a tactic that screams dominance and control. That's the alleged pattern here. Build a situation that makes artists feel vulnerable, then offer help to remind them who really runs things in Houston. It's the same kind of strategy used by organized crews for decades. Not just about respect, but about money and influence. When artists check in, they're often expected to perform at venues connected to the Prince family, hire their security teams, or make appearances that boost their businesses. Some even give shout-outs or endorsements, basically providing free promotion for the Mob Ties brand. That's not small change, that's real money. For someone like Jay Prince, who's got investments in everything from music to boxing to ranching, having major stars feel indebted to him means millions in leverage. It's free marketing, street credibility, and power all rolled into one. And even big industry figures noticed it. Chris Gotti from Murder Inc. once told a wild story about flying to Houston to meet Jay Prince for the first time and realizing just how deep that influence ran. Before heading to Houston, Chris Gotti got a warning from locals. Whatever you do, Chris, don't go to Jay Prince's ranch. When he asked why, they told him, people don't leave his ranch. That was the talk in the streets. The myth, the legend, the warning. But Chris went anyway, determined to see for himself what all the whispers were about. When he landed, Jay Prince didn't send just one ride. He sent 2 SUVs to pick him up. 4 people in one car, 2 in the other, 6 in total. Heavy security, serious energy. They drove him out, made him wait, and finally called him back to Jay Prince's office. What he walked into looked straight out of a movie. Walls lined with hunting trophies and an entire arsenal of weapons displayed right behind Jay Prince's desk. Chris later described it vividly. I'm at my desk now. Behind him, he got the arsenal. He got the AKs here. He got all the weapons behind him. And I'm like, oh man, that's intimidation. And honestly, it worked. That atmosphere sent a message. Power, control, and dominance. Soon after that meeting, the two struck a business deal, with Jay Prince reportedly getting a piece of the publishing rights for tracks recorded by Murder Inc. artists. That's the system Jay Prince built, a web of influence stretching across decades. For over 40 years, this setup has operated right out in the open, with most rappers too afraid to speak publicly about it. And yet, the most unsettling part of this whole story isn't the money or the intimidation, it's what comes next. Because when you start looking closely at the number of deaths surrounding people who've crossed paths with the Prince family in Houston, the picture starts to look darker. To be clear, no one's saying Jay Prince or his sons directly harmed anyone, but the pattern is what raises eyebrows. Too many people have ended up gone shortly after being in their circle, and that's something that can't just be ignored anymore. Duke the jeweler was no small name. He was one of Chicago's most respected jewelers, known for creating custom pieces for some of the biggest stars in the game. In 2020, Duke made a trip to Houston for Boosie's concert and pool party. Just a chill getaway that turned into something way darker. While in town, he attended a private dice game hosted by Jay Prince Jr., and there's plenty of footage showing Duke standing right beside him that night, laughing, counting money, and looking like he belonged there. According to witnesses, Duke was winning big. He had stacks of cash in his hands and seemed completely at ease. No tension, no worries. But here's the thing, Duke was alone. No security, no team, no friends watching his back. He trusted that since he was hanging around the Rap-A-Lot circle, everything would be safe. That trust would cost him his life. The next night, right after leaving Boosie's concert, tragedy struck. Duke the jeweler was robbed and fatally shot, his jewelry stolen. The official story said it was just a robbery gone bad. Maybe someone from Chicago followed him to Houston, or maybe some local thieves saw an easy target. But the streets weren't buying it. People started asking tough questions. Why was Duke, a man who always moved carefully, suddenly so relaxed being alone in a city he didn't know well? Why did he feel comfortable flashing that kind of money around? Did he really believe that checking in with Jay Prince Jr. meant he was untouchable? The timing, the company, and the aftermath left everyone wondering if this was just bad luck or part of a much bigger pattern that keeps repeating itself in Houston's rap scene. And if Duke was under the Rap-A-Lot umbrella, the big question is, where was that protection when he needed it most? Jay Prince Jr. denied having anything to do with the tragedy, saying he didn't even know Duke personally and had no idea he was a jeweler until after the news broke. He also claimed that the dice game Duke attended wasn't even on the same night he was killed, but by then, the public had already made up its mind. Another person gone right after being seen with the Prince family in Houston. The pattern just kept getting harder to ignore. What makes this even darker is how the story ties back to some familiar names. The same DEA agents who once went after Jay Prince himself. Back in 1997, a man named Earl Perry was shot and killed during a dice game in Houston's notorious Fifth Ward. A local man, Lamar Burks, was convicted of the murder and hit with a 70-year sentence. But from the very beginning, Burks insisted he was innocent. He claimed he wasn't even in Houston that night, that he was actually in Louisiana, attending his sister's wedding. Here's where the story takes a wild twist. The two lead investigators on that case were none other than Chad Scott and Jack Schumacher, the same corrupt DEA agents who'd spent years trying to take down Jay Prince and Rap-A-Lot records. They allegedly pushed a narrative that Lamar Burks was some kind of hired gun sent by Jay Prince to silence witnesses connected to a Rap-A-Lot investigation. That theory sounded like something straight out of a crime drama. but it was enough to lock a man away for decades. And the craziest part? These were the same agents who were later exposed for corruption, falsifying evidence, and running shady operations. So if they could fake stories once, who's to say how deep the lies really went in this case? Things were starting to look way more complicated than anyone realized. Here's where things take an unbelievable turn, gang. In 2019, after Chad Scott was finally convicted of corruption, two key witnesses from the Lamar Burks case suddenly came forward, and both of them took back their testimony. One of those witnesses admitted that Scott had straight up pressured and coerced him into lying on the stand. The second witness, Clayton Brown, who was also convicted in the same shooting, dropped a bombshell confession, saying he and another man were the real shooters and that Lamar Burks wasn't even there that night. "I've never seen Lamar, not one time," Brown said in a sworn statement. He explained that he only came forward after hearing about Chad Scott's downfall. "Once I heard this guy got locked up," he said, "I knew it was the perfect time to tell the truth. Now we don't gotta worry about nobody coming to kick our door in and kill us, because that's what this guy Chad Scott was known for doing." Those are chilling words, and they shine a massive light on just how deep the corruption might have gone. So let's put it together. Corrupt federal agents with a personal vendetta against Jay Prince, possibly framing an innocent man for murder, then trying to tie that crime back to Rap-A-Lot just to strengthen their case. That's not just dirty, that's next-level manipulation. Yet even after all this new evidence and the witness recantations, Lamar Burks is still behind bars, serving time for a murder that even the supposed shooters now say he didn't commit. Meanwhile, Jack Schumacher, the other DEA agent who worked alongside Scott, somehow avoided prosecution and continues to hold power, still working as the chief detective for the Harris County District Attorney's Office. The irony is wild. One man loses decades of his life, while the agents who built their careers off lies are still walking free and calling shots. This case doesn't just expose corruption. It shows how deep the web around Jay Prince and his world really runs. But it also leaves a storm of questions hanging in the air. Was there ever truly a hit ordered? If there was, who gave that command? And why has the full story been buried for so long? Those questions still haunt Houston's rap scene. And now we reach the most high-profile death ever linked to the Prince family, the loss of Takeoff from the Migos. It all went down on November 1st, 2022. Takeoff was in Houston with Quavo for what was supposed to be a positive, celebratory event. Jay Prince's son, Jazz Prince, was being honored by the city with his own day, Jazz Prince Day. Quavo and Jazz were close, so naturally Quavo and Takeoff came to show love and celebrate. Later that night, the group hit up a downtown bowling alley with Jay Prince Jr., Mike Prince, and several Rap-A-Lot affiliates. According to the Prince family, everything was chill. Music playing, people laughing, smoking, talking, just good vibes all around. But when the group moved outside, a dice game kicked off, and that's where everything spiraled. From the Prince family's side, the story goes like this. A man named Willie Bland, who was with Quavo and Takeoff, allegedly started an argument. They claim Bland hit a smaller man from their crew with a gun, striking him in the head, and that's what set everything off. Shots were fired in the chaos, and Takeoff was tragically hit. But here's what made everyone suspicious, gang. A video soon surfaced online showing Jay Prince Jr. walking calmly past Takeoff's body just moments after the shooting. No panic, no reaction, no help. People online were furious, asking why he didn't stop to check on Takeoff, why he appeared so cold, and how he could just walk away while one of hip-hop's most beloved artists lay on the ground. That single clip reignited every rumor and theory that had ever surrounded the Prince family, because to many, it didn't look like just another tragic accident. It looked like something bigger, deeper, and far more controlled than anyone wanted to admit. After Takeoff's death shook the world, the Prince family went on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast to tell their side of the story and defend their name. They claimed that the viral clip everyone saw didn't show the full truth. According to them, Jay Prince Jr. wasn't walking away carelessly. He was actually heading to the bathroom to wash blood off his hands. They said Mike Prince was the one who stayed beside Takeoff, trying to help and comfort him. The family insisted that the video only captured 3 seconds out of a much longer, chaotic scene. They also said that after the shooting, Jay Prince Jr. and Mike Prince stayed with Quavo for 2 to 3 hours, making sure he was safe, even helping to get him to the hospital. Their message was clear: we never abandoned Quavo or Takeoff. But the public wasn't buying it. Too many details didn't make sense. People were asking, if the Prince family really runs Houston and checking in with them is supposed to guarantee safety, then how did one of the biggest names in rap end up dead while under their watch? The questions got louder and the trust started to fade fast. Then came the most explosive claim of all. Willie Bland, the man the Prince family blamed for starting the fight, gave a statement to police. And in that statement, he said that Jazz Prince himself had handed him the gun he used that night. Let that sink in. The weapon tied to the fight that led to Takeoff's death was allegedly provided by a member of the Prince family. When Jay Prince was asked about it later, he tried to spin it into proof of innocence. Why would we give someone a gun and then try to rob them? He asked. But that wasn't the real issue. The problem was that a gun connected to their crew ended up in the middle of a deadly altercation. Whether it was bad luck, poor judgment, or something darker, it all circled back to their name. And in one interview, Jay Prince made a chilling comment. He said he wished the bullet had hit Willie Bland instead. That line hit people hard. It sounded cold, and it only made the rumors about the Prince family's influence and power grow even louder across the industry. Instead of focusing on Takeoff's loss, Jay Prince started pointing fingers, calling Willie Bland the real problem behind everything. But remember, Bland wasn't some random guy off the street. He was part of Quavo's crew, someone the Prince family was supposed to be hosting and protecting. That's what made the situation even more disturbing. The whole tragedy pulled the mask off the checking-in system, showing it for what many now believe it really is, a false sense of security that helps the Prince family maintain control more than it protects the artists they claim to look out for. But it didn't stop there. Things got even uglier. After Takeoff's death, Jay Prince publicly turned his attention toward Offset, Takeoff's cousin and fellow Migos member. During that same $1 million worth of game interview, Jay Prince directly addressed Offset saying, "You wasn't really right there with Takeoff when he was alive. So for you to take these positions that you're taking, I got people everywhere. So I hear all kinds of things. I'm just gonna say this to you, don't ever put me in no position where I have to defend myself. That wouldn't be healthy for you." That line shook the internet. People instantly called it what it sounded like, a threat aimed at a grieving cousin still mourning his family member who died under Jay Prince's supposed protection. The audacity of that comment had fans and rappers everywhere stunned. Offset didn't hold back either. He jumped on Instagram and fired back, saying he'd had enough of the disrespect. Then Jay Prince responded yet again, posting a video claiming he had actually helped Offset in the past. He said he once stepped in when Lil Baby's 4PF crew allegedly jumped Offset back in 2020. And even claimed he protected Cardi B when she had issues with the Crips in Los Angeles. But that version of events didn't sit right with anyone. Cardi B, Offset, and even Whack 100 all clapped back, calling cap on everything Jay Prince said. Cardi even went live to say she never needed help from anyone outside her own people. The internet exploded with reactions, and whether Jay Prince's story was true or not, the fallout was already massive. His reputation, once built on power and respect, was now tangled in controversy, fear, and unanswered questions, and the whole world was watching. Jay Prince had once again proven that even when tragedy strikes, even when someone dies under his watch, he still finds a way to control the story and intimidate anyone who dares to question his version of events. It's a pattern that's impossible to ignore. Look at the three most infamous cases: Duke the Jeweler, Earl Perry, and Takeoff. Different times, different people, but the same chilling outcome. They all had ties to the Prince family, and they all ended up dead. And maybe it's just bad luck. Maybe it's the streets doing what the streets do. But maybe, just maybe, the protection being offered in Houston isn't really protection at all. Now we gotta dig into what this whole story has really been leading up to. How Jay Prince turned fear and intimidation into a multi-million-dollar business model. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about respect or street credit. This is about money, serious money. Jay Prince has built an empire that reaches into everything. Rap-A-Lot Records, boxing management, real estate, a cattle ranch, even a condom company. On paper, it looks like a businessman's dream. Multiple income streams, clean branding, and influence across different industries. But look closer, and there's one thing tying it all together: leverage. That leverage comes from his reputation, from the image of being someone you do not cross. It's that aura of quiet threat, the unspoken understanding that Jay Prince gets what he wants one way or another. And here's the wild part: he's admitted to using intimidation to get better business deals, sometimes even bragging about it in interviews and in his own book, The Art and Science of Respect. When Rap-A-Lot Records first landed a distribution deal with Geffen Records, everything looked smooth at first. Money was flowing, the partnership seemed solid, and Houston finally had a seat at the industry table. But behind the scenes, Jay Prince was already setting the tone, making it clear that in any deal involving him or his artists, respect wasn't optional. It was mandatory. At first, everything seemed to be running smooth between Rap-A-Lot Records and Geffen. They were gearing up to drop a deluxe version of the Gato Boys album, Grip It, on that other level. But just 2 months before release, release, Geffen suddenly tried to back out, claiming the album was too violent and too risky to distribute. That decision didn't sit right with Jay Prince, not one bit. According to Jay Prince's own account, he didn't waste time arguing with lawyers or sending letters. Instead, he had some people get beside a Geffen executive and made sure that executive got the message directly with a phone call that changed everything. After that conversation, Geffen dropped Rap-A-Lot from the contract almost immediately. Now that's not standard negotiation, that's intimidation, plain and simple. A show of power so strong it made a major label back down without a fight. Then there's the story of his original business partner, Cliff Blott, one of the people who helped build Rap-A-Lot from the ground up. Cliff was there in the trenches. He brought the gear, ran the day-to-day, and helped launch the company. But when Jay Prince looked at the numbers and saw the business was bleeding cash, he decided it was time to take control himself. Cliff pushed back, saying Jay Prince wasn't qualified to run the label. That disagreement became a turning point. So what did Jay Prince do? He bought Cliff out. But knowing his reputation, the way people talk about how deals get done in his world, you've got to wonder, was that buyout truly voluntary, or did Cliff feel like he didn't have a choice? Either way, the partnership was over, and Jay Prince came out on top. And it doesn't stop there. The Priority Records situation might be the clearest example of his muscle in business. Rap-A-Lot had a 60-40 distribution split with Priority, meaning Priority kept 40% of the revenue. Jay Prince wanted a better deal, but Priority refused, saying a contract is a contract. So what did Jay Prince do? He didn't send lawyers. He waited outside the Priority Records office until he knew the executive Brian Turner was inside. That move alone says everything about how Jay Prince handled business, not with words, but with presence. When he wanted something, he didn't just ask. He made sure people understood what would happen if they said no. And when Jay Prince finally reached out to Brian Turner from Priority Records, the conversation wasn't exactly polite business talk. It was more like a warning with weight behind it. Jay Prince told Brian that some of his guys weren't happy, that they'd been living off the money Rap-A-Lot was generating, and they were furious that Priority was taking nearly half of it. Then he dropped the real bomb. Those same guys knew Brian's home address. The message was clear. Unless Rap-A-Lot was released from their contract within the hour, things could turn bad, fast. 15 minutes later, Priority Records caved. Rap-A-Lot was free. That right there, gang, is textbook extortion, pure intimidation mixed with street-level influence, and it worked flawlessly. But Jay Prince didn't stop there. Later, when he went back to negotiate a new deal with Priority, he decided to get creative with the truth. He told them he had a standing offer from Warner Brothers Records, which sounded like major leverage, except that offer had already fallen through. Still, Priority believed it. They panicked and slashed their cut from 40% down to just 18%. That's fraud and intimidation rolled into one, and it shows exactly how Jay Prince has always played the game, patiently, strategically, and just intimidating enough to win every time. And here's another perfect example. Around that same era, Jay Prince had signed a talented producer named Seven to Rap-A-Lot, and smartly, he owned all of Seven's publishing rights. When Irv Gotti, the boss behind Murder Inc., heard some of Seven's beats, he was blown away and wanted to work with him immediately. What Irv didn't know, though, was that Jay Prince still owned every song Seven made. So while Seven was in the studio cooking up bangers for Ashanti, Ja Rule, and Mary J. Blige, Jay Prince just sat back quietly, letting it all unfold. He didn't warn anyone, didn't demand payment, not yet. He waited until the music was out, until the songs blew up, went platinum, and started raking in millions. Only then did Jay Prince make his move. He knew exactly what he was doing, letting the money build, letting everyone think they were in the clear before stepping in to collect every penny owed. It's a move straight out of a power player's handbook. Stay silent, stay patient, then strike when it hurts most, when the profits are at their peak. When the money from those Murder Inc. hits started rolling in, Jay Prince made the move he'd been waiting for. He picked up the phone and said something simple but powerful. Somebody owes me some money. Since he owned Seven's publishing, he was legally entitled to a cut of every track Seven produced, and that meant a piece of some of the biggest songs in R&B and hip-hop at the time. Irv Gotti had no choice but to pay up. His brother Chris Gotti even flew down to Houston to meet Jay Prince in person to settle the issue. That's when the whole ranch warning story came to life. Locals had already told Chris, whatever you do, don't go to Jay Prince's ranch. But he went anyway, only to walk into that now legendary office full of mounted hunting trophies and weapons covering the walls. Chris said that's when he realized he wasn't dealing with just another record executive. Jay Prince was on a completely different level. From a pure business angle, the move was genius. Jay Prince waited until Murder Inc. was fully invested, with multiple hits already on the charts, before stepping in to claim his cut. But from a moral standpoint, it was shady. Jay Prince easily could have told Irv up front that he owned Sevens Publishing. They could have worked out a fair deal from day one. Instead, he let them dig deeper and deeper until they had no choice but to pay whatever he demanded. And that right there is the Jay Prince business model. Create a situation where people owe you, then collect when they can't afford to say no. Whether it's music, street business, or industry deals, that same formula keeps coming up again and again. But his biggest win, his most legendary move, came years later, and it changed the entire direction of hip-hop. That win was Drake. Back in 2007, Jay Prince's son, Jazz Prince, discovered Drake on MySpace, long before the world knew his name. At the time, Drake was just an up-and-coming rapper from Canada who also sang on his own tracks, something that wasn't common then. Jazz saw something special: the sound, the potential, the star quality. He tried to convince his dad to sign Drake to Rap-A-Lot Records right away. But Jay Prince wasn't convinced. He wasn't sure about the singing rapper thing. It was too new, too different from the hardcore image that Rap-A-Lot was built on. Little did he know that hesitation was about to lead to one of the most lucrative and controversial partnerships in modern rap history. So Jazz Prince came up with a new strategy. At the time, he was touring with Lil Wayne, and he saw a perfect opportunity to make a power move. He pitched Wayne on the idea of creating a joint venture label together, one that would sign Drake as their first artist. Jazz even told Wayne he was ready to put $1 million of his own money into the deal. When Wayne heard Drake freestyle over his A Milli beat, that was it. He was sold instantly. Drake's flow, delivery, and confidence had Wayne convinced he was the next big thing. So they started drafting up a deal. The plan was simple. Drake would sign to a joint venture between Lil Wayne and Jazz Prince, and the two would split the profits 50-50. But before the ink could dry, things took a sharp turn. As Drake's songs started catching fire and the buzz exploded, something strange happened. Jazz Prince was suddenly kicked off Lil Wayne's tour. No warning, no reason, just a one-way plane ticket home. And guess who booked the flight? Lil Wayne's manager. Right away, Jay Prince knew something was off. The move didn't sit right. It felt like someone was trying to cut his family out of the picture. So he reached out directly to Birdman, the boss at Cash Money Records, to see what was going on. Birdman reassured him, saying everything would be handled fairly and that Jazz would get what he was owed. But months passed and nothing happened. No payments, no updates. So Jay Prince made another call. This time, Birdman sent $1 million as a good faith payment. It was supposed to keep things calm. Then, after a few more months with no progress, Jay Prince reached out again and another $1 million came through. But Jay Prince knew the truth. Drake's career was exploding and the numbers didn't lie. $2 million was just a fraction of what they were owed. Drake had gone from an internet buzz artist to one of the biggest rappers in the world, dominating charts and headlining tours. The money that was rolling in from his music, features, and shows was massive. And Jay Prince wasn't about to let anyone shortchange his family's cut. What started as a dream partnership between Jazz Prince and Lil Wayne had turned into a multi-million-dollar standoff, and Jay Prince was getting ready to collect what he believed was rightfully his, no matter what it took. When the money didn't add up, Jay Prince did what he's known for. He went straight to the paperwork and made his move. He ordered a full audit of Cash Money's books and followed it up with a massive lawsuit. And what that lawsuit revealed shocked the industry. It turned out that Drake was officially signed to Lil Wayne's Young Money, which operated under Cash Money Records. But at the same time, he was also signed to another company, Aspire Music Group, which Jazz Prince owned a major stake in. According to the contract, Aspire was entitled to 33% of all Drake's advances and net profits. That's a serious chunk of cash, especially considering how huge Drake had become. Cash Money's defense, they tried to argue that their deal was only with Aspire, not Jazz Prince personally. So if Aspire hadn't been paid, that wasn't their problem. But when the audit came back, the truth hit hard. Cash Money hadn't paid Aspire either. The receipts were right there in black and white. Eventually, the case was settled out of court. Cash Money paid Aspire and Jazz Prince a reported $11 million to close the matter. But that payout left people scratching their heads. Think about it, gang. Drake has made hundreds of millions in his career. If Aspire was supposed to get 33% of his net profits, $11 million seems way too low. So it begs the question, did Jay Prince take the settlement just to move on? Or did he use his trademark leverage behind the scenes to secure other benefits that never made it to the public record? We may never know, but one thing's for sure. Jay Prince turned his son's discovery of Drake into millions. And he did it by showing once again that he's not afraid to go head-to-head with anyone, even industry giants like Cash Money Records. And the reach of Jay Prince's influence doesn't stop with rap music. His intimidation and negotiation tactics have spilled into another world entirely, the world of boxing. because long before Drake became a global icon, Jay Prince was already managing one of the most legendary fighters on the planet, Floyd Mayweather Jr. In the late 90s, Jay Prince decided to expand his empire beyond music and dive into the world of boxing management. He wanted to take his hustle to a whole new arena, one filled with power, money, and influence. His first big target? None other than Mike Tyson, the most feared name in boxing at the time. Jay Prince managed to set up a meeting with Tyson, and according to him, it went better than expected. Tyson agreed to bring him on board as part of his management team. A huge win for Jay Prince. But just one day later, everything changed. Tyson's phone number was suddenly disconnected, and all communication was cut off. Jay Prince believed Tyson's manager, Shelly Finkel, had pulled the plug because he didn't want to share any of Tyson's money or control. But that meeting with Tyson would turn out to be fate, because that's when Jay Prince crossed paths with a young, hungry fighter who slipped him his contact info before leaving. That fighter was Floyd Mayweather Jr. At the time, Floyd was already a champion, but he was looking for someone who could take his career and his paycheck to the next level. Jay Prince and Floyd teamed up for the next 4 years, and during that time, Jay Prince played a major role in building Floyd's image and locking in huge fight deals. But when Jay Prince's management contract came to an end, Floyd made a move that changed everything. He decided not to renew. He wanted to move on, work with other promoters, and handle things his own way. That decision didn't sit well with Jay Prince, not at all. And according to Bob Arum, one of boxing's most legendary promoters, things got violent. Arum told a story about getting a call one day about chaos breaking out at his gym. When he arrived, he said he walked into a scene straight out of a movie. Several men had come in swinging baseball bats, leaving people from Mayweather's camp injured and the gym floor covered in blood. The very next day, Floyd Mayweather showed up at Bob Arum's office, visibly shaken. He told Arum straight up, Prince wants his money from the next fight. That statement said it all. Jay Prince wasn't just asking for what he felt was owed, he was demanding it, and he was willing to send a message to make sure nobody ignored him again. When Bob Arum asked Floyd Mayweather how to handle the situation, Floyd didn't hesitate. Arum suggested sending a letter of credit, but Floyd quickly shut that down, saying, Prince don't do no letters of credit, you better send the cash. That line alone said everything. So Arum pulled out the checkbook and wrote a check for $600,000, which represented Jay Prince's share of Floyd's upcoming fight purse, the amount owed to him as Mayweather's former manager. Arum said he made sure it was all handled formally through Jay Prince's lawyer, and once the papers were signed, the money was sent. Jay Prince got paid in full. Later, when Bob Arum was asked about the incident, his answer said a lot without saying too much. He admitted that Floyd seemed scared. Then he quickly corrected himself, saying he wasn't sure if Floyd was scared or just doing the right thing. But the implication was clear. People got beaten with baseball bats, the gym floor was covered in blood, and Floyd paid up right after. That's the Jay Prince effect, gang. Even one of the greatest boxers of all time, a man who's never flinched at another fighter in the ring, allegedly knew better than to cross Jay Prince when it came to business. That moment cemented Jay Prince's image far beyond hip-hop. It proved that his influence reached deep into multiple industries, from rap to boxing and everything in between. But what makes Jay Prince's legacy even more fascinating and more controversial is that he doesn't always move in silence. Unlike most powerful figures who keep their threats behind closed doors, Jay Prince has made bold, public statements, and somehow he keeps walking away untouched. Let's rewind to one of the most talked about moments, 2014, when rumors spread that Diddy had slapped Drake during a heated confrontation outside a Miami nightclub. The beef reportedly started over the track 0 to 100 / The Catch-Up. According to reports from TMZ, producer Boy 198 had given the same beat to both artists. Diddy claimed it was his to use first, but Drake recorded and released his version before Diddy could drop his. That single beat sparked a storm. Egos clashed, tempers flared, and what started as a studio misunderstanding exploded into one of the wildest behind-the-scenes confrontations in hip-hop, and as soon as Jay Prince's name got involved, the whole situation shifted. Diddy had been sitting on that beat for almost 8 months without ever recording a verse, so Drake finally decided to just drop the track himself. The song, 0 to 100, The Catch-Up, became a massive hit, dominating the charts and solidifying Drake's rise to superstardom. But when Diddy found out, he was furious. He felt Drake had stolen his beat and his moment. So when the two finally crossed paths at a Miami nightclub, things blew up fast. According to witnesses, Diddy walked straight up to Drake and said, "You'll never disrespect me again." Then, he allegedly threw a punch. It was one of those moments that had the entire hip-hop world talking. Two titans from different eras clashing right in public. Now here's the thing, Diddy isn't someone you casually challenge. He's a music mogul who built Bad Boy Records, discovered the notorious B.I.G., and played a major role in shaping hip-hop for decades. On top of that, he's long been rumored to have serious street ties. Most people in the game would think twice or 3 times before coming at Diddy publicly. But Jay Prince isn't most people. He jumped in immediately, dropping a recorded message titled Courtesy Call. And what he said in that message left no room for confusion. Let me put these bully noms on notice by letting them know Drake is family. Puffy feeling like he can put his hands on my family opens the doors for his family to be touched. You reap what you sow. That wasn't subtle. That was a direct threat, plain and simple. Jay Prince was basically saying that if Diddy touched Drake, then Diddy's family could be touched too. That's not music industry talk, that's mob style talk. The kind of language that would normally have law enforcement knocking on your door within hours. But somehow, nothing happened. Jay Prince didn't get questioned, investigated, or charged. And Diddy, he backed down. The beef fizzled out quietly, and Diddy never publicly responded to Jay Prince's threat. Just like that, the whole situation went silent, and Jay Prince's legend grew even larger. Bun B, a respected Houston icon who's known Jay Prince for decades, later explained why almost nobody dares to clap back at him. He said, "I think a lot of people look at it like he's threatening people and this and that, but it's just statements." In other words, to outsiders, it might sound like intimidation, but to those in Houston, it's just Jay Prince being Jay Prince, calm, confident, and always in control, no matter how dangerous the situation might look from the outside. Bun B summed it up perfectly when he said, "If you're wrong, make the situation right. Everybody feels like there's gonna be some violence, but I don't see it going that far." In other words, when Jay Prince speaks, people listen, not just because they're scared, but because his words carry weight. It's not always about violence itself, it's about the possibility of violence, and that possibility alone is enough to make even the biggest names in the industry fall in line. Fast forward to 2021. 2 of hip-hop's biggest icons, Drake and Kanye West, had been locked in one of the longest-running feuds in modern rap. Years of subliminal disses, sneaky bars, and public shots had created real tension between them. Fans thought it would never end. Then out of nowhere, a video surfaced online, and it shocked everyone. In the clip, Kanye West was standing next to Jay Prince, reading a carefully worded message. You could feel the tension through the screen. Kanye said, "This is Ye and Jay Prince. I am making this video to address the ongoing back and forth between myself and Drake. Both me and Drake have taken shots at each other, and it's time to put it to rest." Kanye looked uneasy. Stiff posture, tight expression, almost like he was reading a hostage note. And that's what made people talk. Because if there's one thing Kanye is not, it's someone who backs down easily. This is a man who's gone head-to-head with George W. Bush, Taylor Swift, and even his own record label. But in that video, he looked nervous, controlled, almost coached. The hip-hop world immediately started buzzing. Joe Budden and other commentators pointed out how strange the whole thing felt. Like Kanye wasn't really apologizing because he wanted to, but because he had to. The theory spread fast. Maybe Jay Prince didn't just ask for peace, maybe he enforced it. Because when Jay Prince makes a call, there are only 2 options. You answer it, or you deal with whatever comes next. And when Kanye West, one of the most prideful, outspoken artists in music history, appeared on camera reading an apology next to Jay Prince, it spoke volumes. To the public, it looked like Jay Prince had done the impossible. He'd brokered peace between 2 superstars whose feud had split the industry. But behind the scenes, people couldn't help wondering, was this really reconciliation or just compliance? Either way, the message was clear. In a world full of powerful voices, Jay Prince's voice still might be the one that echoes the loudest. When Megan Thee Stallion tried to break free from her first record deal with 1501 Certified Entertainment, the situation turned ugly almost overnight. The label was run by former MLB player Carl Crawford, and Megan claimed they were blocking her from releasing new music and trying to control her every move. She wanted out, and she wasn't afraid to take the fight to court. But that's when things took a darker turn, because suddenly, Jay Prince's name entered the picture. Reports said Carl Crawford had allegedly brought Jay Prince in to apply pressure and back him up in the dispute. Court documents even mentioned Jay Prince by name, describing him as using strong-arm intimidation tactics. That description alone sent chills through the industry. Then came the moment that made headlines everywhere. Jay Prince made a public statement that many people interpreted as a threat directed at Megan. The exact wording was murky, but the tone, clear as day. The message was that this wasn't just a legal fight anymore. Megan was now going up against 1501 and Jay Prince. Eventually, Megan managed to win her freedom and move on from the contract, but the whole ordeal showed how far Jay Prince's reach really goes. It didn't matter that this wasn't his label, his artist, or his money on the line. If there was an opportunity to exert influence, J. Prince would step in, and when he steps in, people pay attention because that's how he operates. He moves through the industry like a power broker, enforcing loyalty and collecting favors that keep his name feared and respected. And speaking of chaos and power, let's rewind to 2018 when 6ix9ine was at the peak of his trolling fame. Back then, he was going from city to city, talking reckless, picking fights online, and stirring up trouble wherever he went. But when he decided to bring that same energy to Houston, things didn't go as planned. 6ix9ine tried to pull up at J. Prince Jr.'s birthday party, looking to make an appearance and grab some clout, but the move backfired instantly because baby J. Prince's youngest son wasn't having it. 6ix9ine was kicked out before he could even step inside. That moment turned into a message for the whole rap game. Houston wasn't a playground, and the Prince family still controlled who got respect in their city. It was another example of how deeply J. Prince and his sons are woven into hip-hop culture, not just through music or money, but through sheer influence. Whether it's record deals, beefs, or street respect, their reach seems endless, and their name still carries weight that few dare to challenge. The message couldn't have been clearer. 6ix9ine was not welcome in Houston. Word around the city was that he had refused to check in with J. Prince, and that's why he was banned from J. Prince Jr.'s birthday party. The rumor spread fast, and before long, everyone knew that 6ix9ine had crossed a line you don't cross in Texas. Later, while 6ix9ine was testifying in federal court against his former crew, he dropped another bombshell. He claimed that he had been banned from performing at SXSW by the Rap-A-Lot crew. And then, in the middle of sworn testimony, he went even further, admitting that he had robbed Rap-A-Lot affiliates Scum Lord Dizzy and Junior Boy. Saying something like that under oath in a federal courtroom was wild, especially considering who he was talking about. It didn't take long for J. Prince to fire back, and he did it the way he always does, straight to the public. He posted on Instagram, "I'm hearing lies he's telling under oath about robbing me or representatives of Rap-A-Lot. Let me make myself clear. If him or any of those clowns were to try to rob me or anyone from the Rap-A-Lot family, bad news would have beat them home. That's not just confidence, that's a warning. Plain and simple. Another public threat, and once again, no consequences. No police knocking on his door, no charges, no legal backlash, just silence." It was another reminder that J. Prince doesn't need to hide behind closed doors. He can send a message in the open, and people still take it seriously. The whole 6ix9ine situation is fascinating because of who he was at that point. A federal informant working directly with law enforcement, testifying against major gang members, and living under protection. And yet even he seemed cautious when it came to the Prince family. Despite having the government backing him, 6ix9ine never pushed too hard against J. Prince or Rap-A-Lot. That says everything about the kind of respect nor fear that name carries in the industry. And here's the wildest part, gang. None of this is secret. Everything we've talked about, all these stories, the lawsuits, the fights, the alleged extortion, the threats, it's all public knowledge. J. Prince himself has spoken on most of these topics in interviews and even in his book. Other rappers have hinted at it, and insiders across the music industry know exactly what's up, but no one says it out loud, at least not directly, because whether it's loyalty, fear, or just knowing better than to stir the pot, when it comes to J. Prince and his family, the unspoken rule is simple. You don't cross them, and you definitely don't talk about them. Nobody in the music industry openly calls out J. Prince for intimidation or extortion. And there's one simple reason: they're scared. His reputation alone keeps people quiet, but every once in a while, someone speaks up. And when they do, what they say paints a chilling picture of what allegedly happens behind the scenes at Rap-A-Lot Records. One of the few people brave enough to talk was Yuckmuth, a rapper and former Rap-A-Lot affiliate. During an interview with DJ Vlad, he didn't hold back. Yuckmuth said, "Artists was getting fed up. I ain't gonna name what artists, but they was getting fed up, like physically. If you go against the grain, man, it's gonna be some When Vlad asked him to clarify, "You mean physically?" Yuckmuth confirmed, "Physically. Like if you go against the grain, man, it's gonna be some stuff." That's a former artist openly saying that people under the Rap-A-Lot umbrella were getting beaten up if they stepped out of line. And that's not normal record label business, and that's organized crime energy, straight up. But even with that bold claim, Yuckmuth still refused to name names or give specific examples. Why? Because even years after leaving the label, he's still scared of what could happen if he did. That alone says a lot. It's the same fear that's echoed across the industry. People might whisper stories in private, but in public, silence. Everyone knows the line, and no one dares to cross it. Remember the story about Chris Gotti flying down to Houston to meet J. Prince? Before he even arrived, locals warned him, "Whatever you do, don't go to the ranch. People don't leave his ranch." That's the legend surrounding J. Prince, a mix of fact, fear, and folklore. And here's the thing, at this point, whether every story is true or not almost doesn't matter. The perception is the reality. J. Prince has spent decades building a reputation that speaks for itself, a name that commands respect and in some cases genuine fear. People believe that if you cross him, bad things happen, and that belief alone keeps his power alive. Because sometimes power isn't about what you actually do, it's about what people think you're capable of doing. And when it comes to J. Prince, that line between myth and reality is razor thin, and no one's brave enough to find out which side is real. And when everyone believes a person is untouchable, it turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Nobody speaks up, so there's no collective pushback. Nobody files charges, so there's no legal pressure. Nobody inside the industry challenges him, so his power keeps growing. Unchecked, the silence itself becomes his greatest weapon. The most recent example of that is what's happening with Offset right now. After Takeoff's death, Offset has been one of the very few people brave enough to publicly question J. Prince's version of events. When J. Prince went on the $1 Million Worth of Game podcast and dropped those thinly veiled threats toward Offset, Offset fired back hard on Instagram. He didn't back down. He called out the contradictions in J. Prince's story and made it clear he wasn't scared. But the moment he did, the hip-hop world started buzzing with concern. People weren't just talking about drama, they were worried for his safety. And not because Offset did anything wrong, but because everyone knows the pattern. In hip-hop, when you go against J. Prince, people start to assume something bad might follow. That's how deep the legend runs. Soon after, fake news stories started popping up online. Claims that Offset had been placed in protective custody and that J. Prince had been arrested for threatening him. None of it was true. But the fact that people believed it instantly shows how powerful the fear surrounding J. Prince still is. The public doesn't even question it anymore because they've heard the stories, seen the patterns, and connected the dots themselves. Even OGs from other cities started speaking out. One respected veteran from Atlanta posted a warning to artists everywhere, telling them to stop checking in with J. Prince Jr. or anyone claiming to offer protection in Houston. He said, "These fake OGs don't care about your safety. Get real security. Don't let them tell you a car is waiting or that they got you. That's all cap." That statement hit hard because it said what a lot of people had been thinking for years but were too afraid to say out loud. The illusion of protection, the culture of intimidation, the quiet fear running through the industry, it all traces back to one name that everyone knows but few will ever challenge publicly. The truth is, when silence surrounds power for too long, that power only multiplies. And in J. Prince's world, the silence has lasted for decades. That's how you end up like Takeoff, gone over some nonsense that never should have happened in the first place. That line from the Atlanta OG hit hard, gang. It wasn't just advice, it was a warning. A veteran from another city telling young artists to stop trusting the so-called protection offered by the Prince family. But even he didn't use his full name when he said it. Even he spoke carefully, choosing every word like his safety depended on it. That tells you everything about the kind of influence we're dealing with. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The music industry itself is part of the problem. Everyone knows what's going on, but no one does anything to stop it. Record labels know all about the checking in system and how artists feel pressured to play along when they come to Houston. They know some people are being intimidated, but they look the other way because J. Prince isn't just another guy. He's connected, respected, and has been a power player for over 4 decades. Promoters know the same thing. If you're throwing a big event in Houston, chances are you'll have to deal with someone connected to the Prince family. And most promoters won't push back because they want their shows to run smoothly, no problems, no street drama. Artists know too. They've seen the pattern, they've heard the whispers, and they understand what happens when you speak out. So they stay quiet, they play it safe. They'd rather protect their careers than risk becoming a target. And then there's law enforcement. We saw what happened when the DEA tried to investigate J. Prince. They failed. The lead agents turned out to be corrupt, the case fell apart, and even the U.S. Attorney General stepped in and shut it all down. So what message does that send to the local police in Houston? It says, if the feds couldn't touch him, what chance do we have? And just like that, the system feeds itself. Nobody speaks up, nobody steps in, and nobody dares to challenge him. J. Prince keeps his grip on the culture through one powerful mix: fear, influence, and reputation. Because at this point, he doesn't even need to make threats anymore. His name alone is enough. The myth has become reality, and the silence surrounding him is what keeps that reality alive. The music industry keeps J. Prince powerful by doing the one thing that benefits him most: staying silent. Labels, artists, and executives all know the whispers, but they still play along. Rappers keep checking in, still paying tribute, still showing respect, not necessarily because they want to, but because they're afraid of what might happen if they don't. And that fear, it keeps the machine running. year after year. Now let's look at where all that money and influence goes. Because Jay Prince hasn't just built a reputation in the streets, he's built an empire, a legitimate one, layered right on top of his allegedly illegitimate activities. At its peak, Rap-A-Lot Records was one of the most successful independent hip-hop labels in the game. They didn't just make music, they made history. The roster was stacked with legends like the Ghetto Boys, Scarface, Bun B, Pimp C, Devin the Dude, Zero, Trey the Truth, and many more. Their albums went gold and platinum again and again, bringing in millions from record sales, tours, and merchandise. For decades, Rap-A-Lot was the pride of Houston. Proof that you didn't need a major label to dominate the charts. But the last 10 years have been quiet. The label hasn't dropped any major hits lately. In 2018, they signed YBN Namir, but that partnership didn't take off the way people expected. These days, Rap-A-Lot seems to be living mostly off its legacy. Old hits, catalog royalties, and name recognition. And that's where people start asking the uncomfortable question. If Rap-A-Lot isn't pulling in big new money, where is Jay Prince's fortune really coming from? That's one of the main reasons the extortion rumors refuse to die. People look at the lifestyle, the mansions, the cars, the security, the influence, and start wondering how it's all being funded. What we do know is that Jay Prince owns an 1,100-acre ranch just outside of Houston, a huge property where he raises Black Angus cattle and produces hay. In interviews, Jay Prince has said that his hay operation alone brings in about $200,000 a year, and if the cattle side performs equally well, that's roughly $400,000 annually. That's solid income, the kind of steady money that keeps the books clean and the IRS happy. But for someone with Jay Prince's wealth, reputation, and connections, it doesn't seem like nearly enough to explain the millions he's rumored to control or the influence he still commands across the entertainment industry. So the question hangs in the air. Is the ranch just another business venture or part of something bigger? A way to legitimize the kind of power that can't easily be traced on paper. Over the years, Jay Prince has managed some of the biggest names in boxing, including Floyd Mayweather Jr., Andre Ward, and Teofimo Lopez. And if you know anything about boxing, you know that managing top-tier fighters is serious money. Managers typically take anywhere between 10% and 33% of a fighter's purse. And when championship fights are bringing in millions, that percentage turns into a massive payday. When Jay Prince was working with Floyd Mayweather, even for just 4 years, the checks were heavy. Floyd was already a champion, fighting regularly and pulling in multi-million-dollar purses. That means Jay Prince was getting a huge cut from every single bout. Just those few years in Mayweather's corner likely earned him millions and solidified his name as a true power broker in sports, not just in music. But in more recent years, Jay Prince hasn't been as active in boxing management. He still has fighters under his wing, but none at the superstar level of Mayweather. Even so, his past success in the ring gave him another foundation to build his empire on, one that stretched far beyond hip-hop. He's also dipped into a variety of business ventures, from founding a condom company called Strap to real estate investments and even the jaw-dropping purchase of a private island. Moves like that show just how much wealth Jay Prince has stacked up over the decades. But when you start adding up all of these legitimate income sources, the ranch, the real estate, the music catalog, the boxing management, the math still doesn't seem to match the massive influence and power Jay Prince wields in both entertainment and the streets. That's why those long-standing whispers about extortion, protection money, and under-the-table deals refuse to disappear. The balance sheet doesn't lie, but neither does the fear his name still carries. And then there's perhaps his most valuable asset of all, the Mob Ties brand. Officially, it stands for Movement of Bosses Together in Elevated Structure. But to the public, it's become something much bigger. It's a symbol, a name that instantly connects to Houston culture and the empire Jay Prince built. Today, rappers proudly wear Mob Ties merch. Promoters use the brand's name to give their events credibility. It's everywhere, from streetwear to social media, and Jay Prince has monetized it perfectly. What started as a slogan has turned into a cultural phenomenon. A brand that blends business, loyalty, and intimidation all into one powerful statement. At this point, Mob Ties isn't just a company, it's a movement. And just like everything else Jay Prince has touched, it's part business, part legend, and completely untouchable. There's Mob Ties clothing, Mob Ties events, Mob Ties affiliations. It's everywhere. The name alone carries weight. And in the hip-hop world, weight equals money. But let's be real, that brand isn't just built on hustle and strategy. It's built on fear and reputation. The idea behind Mob Ties is simple. If you're with them, you're protected. But if you're against them, you might have a problem. And that, gang, isn't a traditional business model. That's a protection racket with a marketing department. It's intimidation turned into enterprise. But when you really break down how Jay Prince's alleged system works, it's actually brilliantly structured, a mix of street wisdom and business precision that few could ever pull off. Here's how the system runs, step by step. Step 1, establish dominance. Jay Prince did this decades ago by becoming one of the first successful hip-hop entrepreneurs in Houston. He didn't just put out music, he put the city on the map. Rap-A-Lot Records gave the South a real voice in the game, and that earned him cultural capital that no one could take away. But he didn't build that empire with music alone. Behind the scenes, he allegedly used street tactics to make sure there was no competition. By the time Rap-A-Lot was booming, everyone in Houston knew who ran things, and it wasn't up for debate. The DEA investigations, the arrests, the whispers of violence, all of it built his mythos. Each headline, each rumor made his name bigger, scarier, and harder to challenge. That reputation became his shield and his most valuable weapon. Step 2, create a funnel of money and influence. Once you control your territory, the next move is to make sure everything that happens inside it runs through you. For Jay Prince, that system is the checking in culture. By setting the expectation that artists have to check in when they come to Houston, Jay Prince positioned himself at the center of the city's hip-hop economy. If you wanted to perform, party, or do business in Houston, you were expected to tap in with the Prince family. That gave him direct access to every major rapper, promoter, and brand that touched the city. Whether the meetings were friendly or not, the end result was the same. Money, loyalty, and power flowed back to him. Over time, that evolved into mob ties, the public-facing version of his influence. It looks like branding, but to insiders, it represents something deeper, a network built on respect, leverage, and fear. In the world of Jay Prince, it's not just about who you know, it's about who knows not to cross you. That kind of access to artists and industry power players can be monetized in so many ways. Think about it. If every big name who comes through Houston feels like they need to check in with the Prince family, that means there's money to be made at every turn. Artists can be encouraged to use security services connected to the family, to perform at venues tied to their network, or to make appearances and shout-outs that boost the Mob Ties brand. Even business opportunities often end up benefiting the same circle. None of this is ever spelled out as extortion. It's all dressed up as networking, building relationships, and showing respect. But underneath all that polite phrasing, there's always an unspoken rule. If you don't play along, there might be consequences. And that's where the reputation comes in, the power of fear. Whether or not Jay Prince or his sons have personally been involved in acts of violence almost doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the perception, and that perception has been built over decades, reinforced by every story, every rumor, every mysterious situation where someone who didn't check in wound up in trouble. Look at the pattern. Duke the jeweler had no issues until after he was seen with Jay Prince Jr., then he was robbed and killed. Takeoff died while supposedly under the Prince family's protection. NBA YoungBoy's home was broken into, and somehow it was Jay Prince who stepped in afterward to return his belongings. Each one of these incidents tells the same story. You need the Prince family's protection, and if you don't have it, bad things can happen. Whether that's coincidence or design, the effect is the same. The belief spreads, the fear deepens. And that's the genius of Jay Prince's alleged system. It doesn't rely on open threats or contracts written in ink. It's built on psychology. It runs on belief. People have seen enough over the years to convince themselves that it's safer to cooperate, to pay respect, to keep quiet, even if they're not 100% sure of the danger. Because in Jay Prince's world, the perception of power is the power. He doesn't have to lift a finger. His reputation does the heavy lifting for him. And as long as that reputation stays strong, the system keeps running quietly, efficiently, and almost invisibly. Jay Prince never comes right out and says, "Pay me or else." That's not his style, and that's exactly why he's been able to move the way he does for so long. You'll never hear him issue a direct threat that could land him in legal trouble. Instead, he speaks in code, in generalities, in that calm, measured tone that always leaves room for interpretation. He'll talk about defending himself or say things like, "Bad news would beat you home." He doesn't say he's going to make something happen. He just reminds people of what could happen. Every statement sounds reactive, not aggressive. So when someone ends up hurt or something goes wrong, he can always say it wasn't him. It was someone else, and he was actually trying to help or stop it. That's what makes his strategy so powerful. Plausible deniability. He stays protected by never putting himself directly in the line of fire. And on top of that, he's built up so much goodwill over the years that the public gives him the benefit of the doubt every time. Through decades of charity work, supporting local artists, and presenting himself as a successful black businessman who lifted Houston out of obscurity, Jay Prince has become a respected community figure. To many, He's a symbol of success and leadership, and that reputation shields him from scrutiny. It's the perfect balance of respect and fear wrapped in professionalism. Once the system is locked down in one city, the next move is expansion, and that's exactly what Jay Prince has done. He's passed the torch to his sons, letting them handle day-to-day operations while spreading the family's influence further. Their reach now extends across industries, from boxing, where the same kind of control and leverage can be used, to music, where their ties to artists from other cities like Drake stretch their power beyond Houston. And then there's the Mob Ties brand, his most genius move yet. By turning a reputation into a franchise, Jay Prince created a way to monetize the very idea of loyalty and power. The name Mob Ties doesn't just sell merchandise, it sells affiliation. It lets others buy into the image of strength, unity, and dominance that the Prince family represents. From a business standpoint, it's brilliant, a model built on image and influence. But when you strip away the polish, it looks a lot like something darker, a system allegedly fueled by extortion, intimidation, and silence. And while it may keep the Prince family's empire thriving, there's another side to it all. The people who actually pay the price for this kind of control. Because it's not just the artists who check in, and it's not just the ones who end up dead. The impact of Jay Prince's alleged system stretches way beyond the handful of rappers who've made headlines. It affects an entire generation of artists coming up in Houston. Young talent trying to make a name for themselves are faced with an impossible choice. If they want to succeed in music, they've got to build a buzz in their own city first. That's how every great artist starts. But in Houston, building that buzz almost always means crossing paths with the Prince family. And that's where the dilemma kicks in. Do they check in and risk getting pulled into a system they can't control? Or do they refuse and risk being blacklisted, blocked from shows, or even worse? It's a lose-lose situation for artists who just want to create. Because if they do play along and check in, they're giving up part of their independence before they've even made it. They're slicing off a chunk of their earnings, their creative freedom, and their control, all just to keep the peace. That money could have gone toward better studio time, better marketing, or opportunities to push their careers forward. Instead, it ends up going toward tribute payments to people who didn't write their songs, didn't promote their music, and didn't help them earn that money in the first place. And it's not just local artists. When rappers from other cities roll through Houston to perform, they're told the same thing. Check in for your own safety. But as the Takeoff tragedy showed, checking in doesn't guarantee safety. It just guarantees that the Prince family gets their cut. Artists end up paying for security they don't actually need, doing appearances they don't really want, and giving respect to people who haven't earned it, all out of fear of what might happen if they don't play by the rules. That's not how the music industry should operate, gang. Artists should be able to perform, network, and build their fan base anywhere in the country without having to pay tribute to local power brokers. They shouldn't have to trade their freedom for protection that might not even exist. The truth is, this kind of system doesn't just hurt the artists, it holds back an entire city's creativity. Houston's music scene should be thriving on talent, not intimidation. But as long as the check-in culture continues, new artists will keep facing the same impossible decision: chase their dreams on someone else's terms, or risk everything by standing alone. And when you strip away all the headlines, the rumors, and the street talk, what's left are the real victims, the families who lost everything. Takeoff's loved ones lost a son, a brother, a cousin. Duke the Jeweler's family lost a father, a husband, a provider. Earl Perry's family lost someone they cared about deeply. And Lamar Burks, he's been sitting in a prison cell for over 20 years for a murder he might not have even committed. These are the people who carry the true pain. They've lost sons, brothers, fathers, and for many of them, justice has never come. The circumstances surrounding their deaths are cloudy, the investigations are filled with holes, and the people who might know the truth have stayed silent. Imagine being Takeoff's mother, having to wake up every day knowing your son died while he was supposedly under protection, then having to see Jay Prince and his sons doing interviews and podcasts, defending themselves, throwing shade at Offset, and acting like they're the ones being attacked. That's not justice, that's disrespect. And it's not just about one family or one city. The entire hip-hop culture suffers when this kind of behavior becomes normalized. Every time another artist dies, every time another check-in goes wrong, the cycle continues and it spreads. What started in Houston has now made its way to Los Angeles, Atlanta, Chicago, and nearly every major city in the country. Now, young artists think this is just part of the business. They think checking in is the price of success, a ritual you have to follow to stay safe. But that mindset traps them before they even start. It teaches them that power doesn't come from talent, hard work, or creativity. It comes from fear. And that's the saddest part of all. Hip-hop was built on expression, on community, on turning struggle into success. But when fear replaces freedom and when silence replaces truth, the culture loses its heart. The families left behind, Takeoffs, Dukes, Perrys, and so many others, are living proof that these aren't just stories or legends. Real people have paid the ultimate price while those with power continue to move unchecked. That's not justice, fam. That's not hip-hop. That's a system that needs to be exposed and changed before more lives are lost in the name of respect. These days, a lot of young artists grow up thinking they've got to pay tribute to local OGs or risk getting hurt, but that's not what hip-hop was built on, fam. Hip-hop was born from creativity, from competition, from standing on stage, grabbing the mic, and proving you're the best with nothing but your voice and your words. It wasn't built on fear, intimidation, or paying taxes just to be safe. When the culture allows people like Jay Prince to move unchecked, it sends a dangerous message. It says that power and fear matter more than talent and art. It says it's okay for someone to profit off the creativity of others as long as they're scary enough to get away with it. That's not real hip-hop. That's control disguised as respect. And honestly, that's not the kind of culture most of us want to be a part of. Hip-hop was supposed to be about empowerment, about lifting people up, not keeping them scared and silent. But as long as the fear keeps winning, the art keeps losing. Now here's the question everyone keeps asking. If Jay Prince has allegedly been running things this way for over 40 years, why hasn't he ever been charged or convicted? The answer is complicated, but it really comes down to a few key things. The biggest reason? Nobody talks. Victims, witnesses, even people close to the situation, they don't cooperate with law enforcement, and you can't really blame them. When someone has a reputation like Jay Prince does, people are terrified of what might happen if they speak up. Even when a crime happens, even when there's evidence or rumors, folks choose silence. They don't testify. They don't point fingers. They just keep their heads down and move on. Because in their minds, staying quiet is the safest option. That fear is what keeps the cycle alive. It's what makes someone untouchable. You don't need to bribe the system if the system's too scared to touch you in the first place. And that's exactly why Jay Prince's name has lasted for so long. Not just because of what he's done, but because of what people believe he's capable of doing. But at the end of the day, hip-hop shouldn't be built on fear. It should be built on freedom. The freedom to create, to compete, and to shine without having to bow down to anyone. That's the real spirit of the culture. And until that's restored, the art will always be shadowed by the power that claims to protect it. People don't want to give statements. They don't want to be labeled as snitches or seen cooperating with police, especially when the person in question is Jay Prince. And without witnesses or testimony, it's almost impossible for law enforcement to build a case that sticks. That silence is what protects him more than anything else. Like we've said before, Jay Prince is extremely careful about how he moves. He never makes the kind of direct threats that could be played back in a courtroom. He doesn't say, "I'm going to hurt you." Instead, he uses implications. When he says something like, "Don't put me in a position where I have to defend myself," it's technically not a threat. It's a warning. And warnings aren't illegal. So when something bad happens, there's always distance between Jay Prince and the act itself. He wasn't the one who broke into NBA Youngboy's house. He wasn't the one who pulled the trigger on Takeoff. He wasn't the one who robbed Duke the jeweler. But the pattern surrounding these incidents keeps people talking. And that's the genius of it. The fear does the work for him. Even if prosecutors wanted to go after him, they'd have to prove that he ordered these events or played a part in a conspiracy. And that's nearly impossible without witnesses willing to testify. Nobody wants to be the one who stands up and points at Jay Prince. Because in hip-hop, and in the streets, that's not just dangerous, it's career-ending. And when you look at the one time the feds actually tried to take him down, the DEA investigation, that case blew up in their faces. The two lead agents, Chad Scott and Jack Schumacher, were later exposed as corrupt. They falsified reports, coerced witnesses, and even ran their own extortion schemes on the side. These weren't clean investigators. They were criminals wearing badges. So now, every time Jay Prince's name comes up in connection with law enforcement, people ask the same question. If the agents themselves were dirty, how can anyone trust the evidence they collected? How can you believe any of the cases they built? That corruption didn't just destroy their credibility. It also tainted everything connected to Jay Prince's legal troubles. It gave him a ready-made defense, that he was being targeted unfairly, that the system itself was corrupt. And honestly, with proof of how those DEA agents operated, who could argue against it? That's the paradox of Jay Prince, a man who spent decades walking the thin line between influence and intimidation, business and fear, all while staying just far enough from the fire to never get burned. That corruption scandal gave Jay Prince something powerful, a legitimate defense. He could say, "I was being targeted by dirty cops who were trying to frame me." And honestly, based on what we know about Chad Scott and Jack Schumacher, that claim might hold some truth. There's no question that those agents were corrupt, and Jay Prince may have been unfairly targeted, at least in some situations. But here's the catch. Just because some of the investigations were compromised doesn't automatically mean he's innocent of everything. It just means that the evidence can't be trusted anymore. The line between guilt and protection gets blurry when both sides are playing dirty. And over the years, Jay Prince has allegedly built relationships with some very powerful people, the kind of connections that make it almost impossible for anyone to touch him. There's that old rumor about him donating $200,000 to Al Gore's presidential campaign, the letter from Congresswoman Maxine Waters defending him, and the fact that the U.S. Attorney General herself personally shut down the DEA investigation into Rap-A-Lot. That's not just luck, that's influence. When you have friends in high places, it becomes a whole lot harder for local or even federal authorities to come after you. And Jay Prince has been strategic about it. He's built his public image carefully as a successful black businessman, a philanthropist, and a man who's helped put Houston on the map. He donates to charities, he funds community programs, he supports young talent. On paper, he looks like everything a city would want in a role model. That's what makes him so untouchable. Because when prosecutors or politicians look at Jay Prince, they don't just see the rumors or allegations, they see someone who's respected, admired, and connected. Someone whose downfall could easily be spun as an attack on a community leader. That kind of political shield makes it extremely difficult for anyone to build a serious case without backlash. If the government really wanted to take him down, they'd have to go big. Something like a RICO case, the same kind used to prosecute mob bosses and organized crime syndicates. But RICO cases are notoriously complex, expensive, and take years to build. You need undeniable proof of an ongoing criminal enterprise with multiple cooperating witnesses willing to testify. And as we already know, that's not something anyone in Houston seems eager to do. So while Jay Prince may have faced investigations, arrests, and headlines over the years, he's still standing tall. Because his combination of influence, fear, and connections keeps him right where he wants to be, untouchable. To take someone down under RICO laws, prosecutors have to jump through major hoops. They need to prove a pattern of ongoing criminal activity. Not just one incident, but a whole system that stretches over time. They need multiple witnesses who are brave enough to testify. They need mountains of documentation, phone records, money trails, recordings, all connecting the dots. And as we've seen with some of the recent RICO cases in hip-hop, that process can take years just to build and even longer to prosecute. Look at what's happening right now with Young Thug or the case involving Big U that you mentioned in your question. Both of those situations show how intense and slow these cases are. Investigators have to prove that what's happening isn't just business. It's an organized criminal enterprise. And that's a huge challenge, especially when the person at the top knows exactly how to move without leaving fingerprints. Now, when it comes to Houston, law enforcement might not even have the resources nor the political will to take on someone like Jay Prince. Think about it. He's been a respected name in the community for over 4 decades, with deep ties in both politics and entertainment. Going after him would be a massive risk, especially if the case doesn't stick. But comparing Jay Prince to Big U is actually really interesting because the similarities are undeniable. Big U, whose real name is Eugene Henley Jr., was recently hit with a RICO case for allegedly running an extortion ring out of Los Angeles. According to federal prosecutors, he used his status as a respected OG and his connections in the music industry to pressure artists and businesses for money and favors. Sound familiar? It's almost identical to what's been said about Jay Prince for years. The checking-in system in LA works a lot like the one in Houston. Artists are expected to reach out to certain people when they come to town, show respect, and sometimes even pay tribute. And if they don't, there could be consequences. Federal documents allege that Big U used intimidation and influence to keep people in line, the same formula critics say the Prince family has mastered. In fact, some reports have even linked Big U to the events surrounding Nipsey Hussle's death, though he hasn't been charged in connection with that tragedy. Still, the feds are looking closely at his pattern of behavior, his power, his reputation, and the way he allegedly turned that influence into control. It's the same conversation happening in Houston. Different city, same playbook. Both men turned respect into leverage and fear into income. And as long as those systems keep running under the radar, it's nearly impossible for the law to shut them down completely. Some people in the industry have even speculated that Jay Prince might have actually been Big U's mentor, that Big U learned the whole checking in system directly from him and then brought that same playbook to Los Angeles. And if there's any truth to that, then things get real interesting. Because if Big U is now facing RICO charges for allegedly doing the same thing Jay Prince has been accused of doing for over 40 years, then the question practically asks itself, is Jay Prince next? The feds have made it clear they're not afraid to use RICO laws against hip-hop figures anymore. Young Thug, Gunna, Big U, and others have all found themselves under the same legal spotlight recently. And when you look at those cases, the writing's on the wall. If prosecutors think you've turned influence and fear into organized control, they're coming for you. That's why some people believe Jay Prince has been more vocal than ever lately. The interviews, the podcasts, the public appearances, they're not random. They might be strategic. By controlling his own narrative, he's shaping how the world sees him before anyone else can. If the feds ever do come knocking, he wants the public to view him not as a criminal, but as a legitimate businessman, a self-made mogul who's being unfairly targeted by a biased system. It's a smart move when you think about it. Public opinion can't stop an investigation, but it can shape the story. And Jay Prince knows how powerful that can be. The man's been managing his image for decades, mixing respectability with intimidation, charity with control, and leadership with fear. And to be fair, there's another side to this, the defense that Jay Prince himself would probably make. From his perspective, everything that's been called extortion or intimidation could just as easily be described as community structure and mutual respect. He might say that checking in isn't about pressure, it's about connection, that it's a cultural tradition, not a criminal system. He'd likely argue that he's not a villain. He's a protector of artists, a man who helps people move safely in his city, someone who's built bridges between the streets and the industry, and given how much he's done publicly for Houston, the donations, the mentorship, the events, there are plenty of people who'd believe that. Still, with the feds watching hip-hop closer than ever, the question lingers. How long can someone walk that thin line between power and prosecution before one side finally gives? If you ask Jay Prince to explain his side, he'd have a clear defense ready. And honestly, it's a strong one. He'd argue that everything he's built over the past 4 decades is legitimate business. He'd name-drop the ventures he's proud of. Rap-A-Lot Records, his 1,100-acre ranch, boxing management, real estate investments, and more. He'd point to tax returns, business licenses, and contracts as proof that he's not some street boss, he's a self-made entrepreneur. In his eyes, his success isn't about intimidation, it's about strategy. He saw opportunities others didn't, he worked hard, and he made smart moves. That's the story he wants the world to remember. Not a criminal mastermind, but a visionary businessman who turned Houston into a powerhouse city for music and culture. And he's got evidence to back up parts of that story. He can point to the DEA investigation, the one that was later exposed for being led by corrupt agents Chad Scott and Jack Schumacher. Both men were caught falsifying reports, coercing witnesses, and running their own side hustles. From Jay Prince's perspective, that proves his claim that he was a successful black man being unfairly targeted in an industry dominated by powerful white institutions. And to be fair, that argument holds some weight. There's no denying that those DEA agents were dirty, and it's entirely possible that Jay Prince faced real bias in how he was treated. The corruption in that investigation definitely compromised everything the government built against him. He'd also argue that the so-called checking-in system has been twisted by outsiders who don't understand it. To him, it's not extortion, it's culture. He'd say it's about building relationships and showing respect, not about threats or payments. When artists reach out to him while visiting Houston, he'd say they're doing it out of choice, not fear. He'd likely point to his relationships with people like Drake, Quavo, and other major artists as proof that these are real friendships, not forced connections. He'd say that he's opened doors for artists, protected them when necessary, and helped them move safely through a city that can be unpredictable if you don't know the right people. And when it comes to the violence, the deaths, the robberies, the tragedies that seem to circle around his name, he'd insist he had nothing to do with any of it. He'd say he doesn't control what happens in the streets, that he's just as shocked as anyone when bad things occur. From Jay Prince's perspective, he's not the villain the internet makes him out to be. He's a man who built an empire, earned his respect, and survived decades of hate, jealousy, and corruption while keeping his hands clean. Jay Prince would be the first to say that he can't control what other people do. He'd argue that he's not responsible for every individual who claims to be affiliated with mob ties or Rap-A-Lot Records. If someone does something reckless or violent, that's on them, not on him. And truthfully, that's a hard point to argue against, because he's never been convicted of a violent crime, and there's never been solid evidence directly linking him to any of the major incidents that carry his name. He doubled down on his track record, his charity work, his support for local artists, and his contributions to Houston's culture. He'd remind everyone of the scholarships he's funded, the neighborhood projects he's supported, and the way he's put Houston hip-hop on the map. In his words, he's given back more than he's ever taken and helped more people than he's hurt. And honestly, there's some truth in that. J. Prince has done good things for his city. He's given young artists opportunities, donated to schools, and become a symbol of Houston pride. But here's the uncomfortable part. Does the good outweigh the bad? And can you really call it charity if it's possibly built on money earned from intimidation or fear? That's the question that keeps hanging in the air. The kind of question that doesn't have a simple answer. So where does this story go from here? What happens to J. Prince and the empire he spent 4 decades building? Honestly, the most realistic outcome is that nothing changes. J. Prince keeps doing what he's always done. The artists keep checking in, the system keeps running, and as long as victims stay silent, as long as there's no major investigation, and as long as the political world stays quiet, J. Prince remains untouchable. He'll keep showing up on podcasts, giving smooth interviews, and speaking with that same calm authority that's made him one of the most respected and feared figures in hip-hop. He'll keep building the Mob Ties brand, expanding his influence, and making money from both his legitimate ventures and his legendary reputation. And just like that, the cycle continues. The myth grows stronger, the silence grows deeper, and the line between power and fear gets harder to see. Because whether you view him as a hero, a villain, or something in between, one thing's undeniable. J. Prince has built a legacy that most men couldn't even dream of. And for better or worse, he's made sure his name will never be forgotten. If the feds ever decide to go after J. Prince with a RICO case, the same way they did with Big U, everything could shift overnight. A RICO investigation would give prosecutors the power to dig deep, to look at the entire operation instead of isolated incidents. It would let them connect the dots that local police could never fully piece together, and maybe even compel witnesses who've been too scared for years to finally tell their stories. But here's the catch. Building a RICO case takes time. We're talking years of surveillance, financial tracking, interviews, and court filings. It requires serious resources and the kind of political will that only comes from the highest levels of the Justice Department. And when you factor in J. Prince's connections, the politicians, the community leaders, the powerful friends, it's unclear if the government would even want to take that risk. So maybe the real change won't come from the courts, but from the culture itself. Maybe the most hopeful outcome isn't a RICO case, but a shift in mindset. That shift is already starting, little by little. After Takeoff's death, people began asking hard questions. The industry started whispering less and talking more. Rappers and fans alike started to question the check-in culture and the way fear had been disguised as respect for so long. If enough artists, especially the new generation, now stand together and say, we're not doing this anymore, then the system loses its grip. If the biggest names in hip-hop stop feeding into that fear, stop normalizing it, and refuse to play by those unwritten rules, then that entire structure of intimidation starts to crumble. But that kind of change takes courage. It takes unity, and it takes artists willing to risk their comfort and careers to stand up for what's right. Because as long as people keep staying quiet, the cycle keeps spinning, and J. Prince stays untouchable. Maybe one day, hip-hop will reclaim what it was built on: creativity, competition, and truth, instead of fear and silence. Maybe the next wave of artists will realize they don't have to check in to make it, they just have to speak up and stand tall. Because once enough voices rise together, no single name, not even one as powerful as J. Prince, can keep the culture in check forever. J. Prince isn't the young, hungry mogul he once was. He's been running the game for over 40 years, and time always catches up, even with legends. Sooner or later, he's going to step back completely and let his sons, J. Prince Jr., Jazz Prince, and the rest of the family, take full control of the empire he built. But that raises a serious question. Will they be able to maintain the same level of respect, influence, and fear that's kept their father untouchable for decades? Will they have the same voice, the same weight behind their name? Or will that transition of power create cracks big enough for the system to finally collapse? Only time will tell, because in the end, this story isn't just about J. Prince, it's about us. It's about what we as a culture are willing to accept and normalize in hip-hop. Are we really okay with artists being extorted under the guise of respect? Are we okay with people losing their lives because they didn't check in with the right person? Are we okay with fear being valued more than talent? Because that's what's at stake, fam. Every time the culture stays silent, every time we shrug and say, that's just how the game works, we're giving our approval. We're saying this is normal, that this is the price of success. But it's not normal. It's not okay that Takeoff is gone. It's not okay that Duke the Jeweler was murdered. It's not okay that young artists in Houston have to choose between their independence and their safety. That's not music, and that's manipulation. There's no denying that Jay Prince built something legendary. He's turned Rap-A-Lot Records into history. He's put Houston on the map. He's helped launch the careers of icons and created generational wealth for his family. On paper, it's the blueprint for success. But the real question is, at what cost? Because behind the millions, the fame, and the polished interviews, there's a darker side that the culture can't keep ignoring. For every artist who's made it under Jay Prince's wing, there are others who've been silenced, sidelined, or scared into submission. And as the torch passes to his sons, the future of that empire and of hip-hop's power structure hangs in the balance. Will it keep running on fear and silence, or will the next generation finally break the cycle and rebuild the culture on respect and freedom instead? That's the question the entire industry needs to answer before it's too late. How many people have been hurt? How many have been extorted? How many families have lost someone they love? And how much longer are we going to keep pretending it's all just part of the game? The hard truth is this: Jay Prince's power only exists because we let it, because we're scared to speak out, because we look the other way every time something doesn't sit right. But now you know the truth. You've seen the pattern. You've heard how deep the system runs. And once you know, you can't unknow it. So the real question becomes, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Are you going to keep supporting artists, brands, and businesses that turn a blind eye to this kind of behavior? Are you going to keep staying quiet when you see injustice in the culture you love? Or are you going to speak up and demand better from the people who claim to represent hip-hop? Are you going to say out loud that hip-hop deserves more integrity, more respect, more accountability? Because that's what it'll take to change things, fam. Not silence, not fear, but voices, united, fearless, and loud enough to shake the system. And yeah, I know this one was heavy. We went deep into the darkness, extortion, intimidation, corruption, and death. These aren't easy topics to talk about, but they're necessary. Because if we don't talk about it, nothing ever changes. If we keep brushing it off like it's just the way the game works, then we're part of the problem too. Hip-hop is bigger than any one man, bigger than Jay Prince, bigger than Rap-A-Lot, bigger than Houston, bigger than the streets. It's a global movement, built from struggle, creativity, and resilience. It's a voice for the voiceless, a light that turned pain into art and made the world listen. But for it to keep growing, for it to stay alive and real, we have to hold people accountable, no matter how powerful they are. Because the moment we stop doing that, hip-hop stops being about truth and starts being about control. So maybe it's time to flip the script. Maybe it's time for artists, fans, and communities to stand together and say, enough. Because hip-hop doesn't belong to the ones who rule through fear. It belongs to the ones who create, who speak truth, and who dare to change the game. And if we remember that, if we protect that, then no empire, no name, and no legacy can ever hold the culture hostage again. We've got to start demanding better, not just from outsiders, but from our own people, our leaders, our OGs, our executives, the ones shaping the sound and soul of the culture. We have to say it loud and clear. Talent matters more than fear. Art matters more than intimidation. Life matters more than money. Because when we forget those truths, we lose what made hip-hop powerful in the first place. Let's keep it real. Jay Prince and his sons have allegedly pulled millions out of rappers through intimidation and control. Their names have been tied to multiple deaths, and their empire built on fear and reputation more than business or brotherhood. But here's the thing about empires, fam. They always fall. It's just a matter of time, and when this one eventually does, I hope what rises after is something better. Something built on respect, creativity, and love for the culture, not fear or manipulation. I want to see a hip-hop world where young artists can chase their dreams without having to check in, where being from the streets doesn't mean being trapped by them. That's the hip-hop I believe in. That's the hip-hop we all deserve. If you made it this far, drop a comment and let me know what you think. Do you see Jay Prince as a misunderstood businessman, or do you think he's a man who's been getting away with too much for too long? Do you think the feds should finally step in, or is this something the culture itself needs to fix from the inside out? Let's talk about it, really talk about it, because silence is what's allowed this to keep going for decades. The more we stay quiet, the more power we give to fear. But if we start having these conversations out loud, honestly, and without holding back, we start taking that power back. And before you dip out, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next, because the next drop's gonna be even deeper. Until then, stay safe, stay sharp, and remember this: never let fear run your life. You've got a voice, and your voice has power.